Hello, I am Dr. Shay Butler, author of Better Not Perfect, From Hot Mess to Life Success, and creator of the Better Not Perfect podcast. It is my honor and privilege today to bring you the interview of Dr. Pat Barbanell as we explore Freedom Summer. Join us and come in together. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Patricia Barbanell, and I was a worker in the Freedom Schools in the summer of 1964. There we got it. Okay.
Well, thank you, Dr. Barbanell. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here with you today. I know you told me to call you Pat, so for the sake of this interview, I will. So why don't we begin with you telling me something about your younger years?
My younger years.
Yes, about your parents. Did you have any siblings?
Okay, well, I grew up in, I was born in Manhattan, lived there until I was about 3, and I have a brother, had a brother, he's gone now. And we moved to Westchester, Mount Kisco, and then to rural Connecticut in a little town called Huntington, which was part of Shelton, Connecticut, in the southern part of Connecticut. And what else would you like to know?
Oh, tell me about your parents. What about their backgrounds, their occupations, education?
Well, my mother was a housewife. She had worked. She was a teacher, but then when she got married, she became a housewife. My father was an engineer, and before that, their politics. My mother and father met at a, I guess you would call it a socialist camp. There were a lot of them in the 20s, 30s, in what is now, I guess, Dutchess County, I don't know. But that's where they met. My father was working there. My mother went to meet guys, so she met a guy. So that's where they met. My father, you want me to keep going?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
My father, his family was, his mother was political. His mother had spent 2 years in a Russian prison, in a Tsarist prison.
Wow.
And was sprung, I think it was the my dates are going to be wrong here, 1905 revolution or something. There was there were many of these revolutions. Anyway, she was in jail before the one they finally won. And she was there for 2 years. And then some guy, my grandmother, apparently to the people of the guys of the day was very attractive. So some guy had money and liked her and sprung her and put her on a boat and shipped her off to America where she had a brother. But in the process of being there, she had an ear infection, and so she was hard of hearing for the rest of her life. My father's father, he, I don't know that he was particularly active. He was in Minsk, I think, or around that area. And from what I've read, there was a lot of political action and stuff, but I don't know anything about it. All I know, they told me the Tsarist army came to enlist, young men of his age or boys, and he took off running barefoot across the steppes.
Wow.
I don't know if the barefoot part is true, but that's what they said. And he somehow got to Europe and got on a boat somewhere along the line and came here. So I don't even think they came to Ellis Island. I believe my grandmother might have gone. There was a place up in Boston where they brought people before they opened up Ellis Island. Be that as it may. My mother's parents were very middle class. Her father was a milkman. Her mother was a housewife who had 7 children, 5 of whom lived, to be adulthood. And from what I understand, she was a very brilliant woman, but there were no politics there. My mother, she's dead now, but she was never political at all.
What was your family's religious affiliation?
We're Jewish.
You are.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
Talk to me a little bit about your education. What was it like? Elementary school? Did you have favorite subjects, or were you involved in extracurricular activities?
Well, I was involved in everything I could get my hands on by the time I got to high school. Yes, I was involved. 4-H club, Girl Scouts. God only knows. In high school, I edited the high school newspaper. I worked on the yearbook. I was a very inquisitive kid, so I just did everything that I could. My parents were not particularly religious. A lot of kids my age, were going to their various religious activities, in their churches. But since we were Jewish, the closest synagogue was like 2 towns away, and my father, being as religious as he was, it was too much trouble. He thought they should come pick me up. He was an interesting man, my dad. But anyway, so I never had any of that kind of thing. And I did not have a lot of social life because at that time, being a smart girl was not particularly welcomed in a small working class factory town. I even had teachers make fun of me sometimes if I answered right and boys answered, wrong. So it was something else. And when I went to graduate high school, I was second in my class. But before that, there was money that we're going to give traditionally to people who had the highest grades in social studies and math, whatever. What they did was take all the money that I should have gotten and split it in half between me and the highest ranking boy who was 10th in the class.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, right. Well, hey, their remark to me was, well, you're just going to get married anyway. So what do you need this for?
Wow.
It was a different world. So, I went off. I was not too enamored of school at that point. I felt pretty negative about it. Somewhere in the middle of that, I got some kind of a high school fellowship to go to a National Science Foundation camp that was in our region.
Was there diversity in your high school? Were there other racial minorities or?
Well, diversity in my high school was Orange Irish and Green Irish, and Italian, North Italian and South Italian. There was, in my high school, I think there was 1 or 2 African American kids. I don't ever remember anyone Spanish. I don't remember, anything. I mean, it just wasn't at that time. So, but there was plenty of tension between those groups, I'll tell you. My girlfriend, when my girlfriend was dating, she was Irish and she was dating. I guess her father was Green Irish and had been in World War I and very green. And she was dating an Italian. And they almost had a civil war, because he was so dark. So it's funny. It's just, I think about it sometimes and it's weird.
Yeah, people will always find a way to just separate themselves and be different, right?
My mother, on the other hand, used to have episodes where they'd come to blows, these groups, various groups. And my mother was not the brightest bulb on the ceiling, but she had a very good heart. And one time they were collecting newspapers for some episode where they're collecting newspapers for one of the churches, and the Italian group took them and whatever, and they got into this real, as only a small town war could be, a real nasty little thing. And my mother stood up, and she's crying. She said, "What is the matter with you people? You're all Christians." So I guess I learned something from that.
Yeah.
Because she was not afraid, even though she was in tears, to stand up and in front of all these people in the news and whatever and say what she thinks. And meanwhile, they make peace, these people, somehow, I don't know.
Wow. Were there other Jewish students at your school?
No, there was one other Jewish student. Well, beside my brother, of course.
Yeah.
So it was, let's just say I wasn't part of the mainstream.
So tell me about your plans for college. What did you major in? How did you select the college that you would go to?
That's funny. You know, someone once said 90% of life is showing up, you know. Select. I suppose I did select. I applied to several colleges. My grades were very good, but it was a very small high school. As it turns out, the third from the worst in the state of Connecticut. And I applied to, what's the Harvard and what's the female? At that time it was a separate college. It's not Bryn Mawr.
No, it's Radcliffe.
Radcliffe, thank you. Radcliffe. So I applied to Radcliffe and they gave me an interview, but I'll never forget the interview. I sat down and this woman said, what high school did you go to? I said, Connecticut. And she said, oh, well, we never take students from high schools we've never heard of. I kid you not. And so I looked at her and I said, well, why did you bother to bring me up here? And she had no answer for that. But that was pretty much my experience with them. I did end up applying to the University of Connecticut, which of course I got into because everybody did. And my uncle, who was a lawyer, had money, and he was contributing big bucks to Brandeis University. It was just getting started. And my cousin was up there. And he told my parents, well, if she wants to go there, apply, and I'll give her, you know, the money she needs for her first year. And that's what happened. So I ended up going to Brandeis.
Yeah, a very good Jewish affiliated college.
We used to say that it was worse than a Jewish, you know, as a student, worse than a Jewish family because all the teachers were Jewish, all the students were Jewish, and it was very, you know, when you're wanting to grow up and be different, it was like having your Jewish aunts and uncles all around you. They were brilliant. They were great teachers. I mean, absolutely. Marcuse, and, you know, I don't know if you know who he was. He was a fantastic, I guess, socialist, communist philosopher. Wrote a number of books, One-Dimensional Man, and, you know, these means nothing to you. And Abraham Maslow was another one.
Oh, okay.
You've heard of him?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So these were, I'll tell you about, if you know who he is, they ran as an experiment because all of the professors had been sort of on the edges of where they were because anti-Semitism was big at that time. So, you know, a lot of them were just holding on by their fingernails. So a lot of them were offered jobs because they knew they were brilliant and good, and they knew they would take it because the jobs that they had were very tenuous. Abraham Maslow was one of them. And they decided, these brilliant guys, that, and I don't even remember that there were any women, but these brilliant guys decided it would be a great experience for freshmen to experience what a seminar was, because after all, you know, as a freshman, you only go to big lectures. So they, you know, people who wanted to, myself included, signed up for, you know, the freshman seminar, and my good luck, although I didn't know it at the time, is I got Maslow. And
wow.
Yeah, he was very interesting. We met at his house, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, he was very interesting. He shopped the pants. That's a funny turn of phrase. He shocked our young little minds one day. He said, if you want next class, you can come naked. And I remember saying, what?
Wow.
Yeah, no, he was trying to loosen us up, I'm sure, but yeah, it was a great experience. They were right, it was a great experience.
Yeah, there's so many today even still reference Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting, man.
Yeah. So what did you major in?
Oh boy, I'm trying to remember. Because seriously, I went through many changes. I think, first of all, you have to understand I never finished Brandeis. The civil rights movement interrupted. But at the beginning, I was majoring in, I think, history, and I might have even been majoring in science, because my whatever those tests are, I scored very high on the science, much higher than on anything else, which goes to show they're nonsense, because that's not what I wanted to do. But I got shifted into the sciences. I didn't take a lot of the humanities courses, and so I went 3 years there, and then I went into the civil rights movement. When I came back, I went back to school. And I guess I majored in art when I came back. I went to Hunter College and graduated with a master's, a BA, and then a master's in art. But I finally got to take the humanities courses that I wanted.
So you were involved in Freedom Summer, and were you recruited to be involved from Brandeis, or how did you get
Not
connected?
personally. There was a folk festival in Newport, Rhode Island. There were, for a couple of years. It was a big deal, and I went up there. And I was in Brandeis, of course, at the time. And the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which you probably know of,
Yeah.
had a table, and they were signing up people to go to Mississippi. Well, I wasn't 20 yet, but my boyfriend, well, he wasn't 20 either, but if you weren't, you needed your parents' permission.
Okay.
So Paul signed up, his parents, being who they were, of course, signed on. I came home and asked my parents, and my father said, no way, it's dangerous. I said, it's not dangerous, what are you talking about? So I guess I was such a naive child. Anyway, a couple months later, I turned 21, and the day after I turned 21, I took off to Mississippi.
Wow.
Of course, my dad was absolutely right. It was very dangerous. He did not talk to me for 2 or 3 years. I mean, literally did not talk to me. He was so angry with me.
Wow.
Yeah, but anyway, that's how I came to go.
And so when you went, did you have other friends and acquaintances join you or go, and then when you all got there, what did you expect? What did you think the experience
Well,
was
there were
gonna
a
be?
few kids from Brandeis. Paul, of course, I knew. There was a guy named David Gelfand, I remember him, and the names I don't remember, but there was a small cadre of people from Brandeis. And what did we expect? I don't know what we expected. I mean, we got on a bus, and we went down to, I guess it was Atlanta. And that was where they did the training, And they called it training, and what they basically were doing was training us nonviolent training, and trying to do triage on what they thought we could do. They thought I would be better as a teacher than going around the people trying to recruit them. Probably were right, because I had no idea what these people were about. So anyway, so we went through the training. It was pretty exciting. I mean, there was Stokely Carmichael, do you know?
Wow,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah, my hero, truly, Robert Paris Moses. Have you ever heard
Yes.
of him? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
To me, he was the end. He was brilliant. He was, I think, a graduate student at Harvard at that point, or maybe finishing up, and he was pretty well running it. And what I loved about the way he did the training is that he never wanted it to be about him. Somehow he always, and I think it formed a model for me. It was always about you incorporating this into you. That a success for a teacher is if your students learn this and it becomes part of them. That was the thing about him that really excited me.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a very special man.
So what was your orientation like?
Well, I don't remember a lot. I mean, first of all, I got to eat a lot of foods I'd never eaten. You know, and we were staying like in a church. I remember that. And then we did exercises in nonviolence, you know, falling down on some, you know, the usual thing. I'm sure they're still doing similar things in nonviolent training today. You know, how to be passive in the face of, you know, unreasonable aggression. And then a little bit of, I think there must have been some history of why we were going down there and what, you know, what it was about, because most of us did not have a clue, you know. So, and then somewhere, I don't know whether it was just before they did the recruiting or, well, no, it was before we were recruited. The episode in Mississippi with Goodman, Schwerner, and Cheney, you know, happened. I think that was the modus for them to go and bring all these kids together. I once heard one of the leaders say that they had wanted to bring a lot of white kids down there and put them in jeopardy, and maybe things would happen to them, and that would get the politicians in the North moving. I mean, that's a pretty sardonic thing to say, but actually it was true, and it worked. Fortunately, not too many people got hurt in the process, but they, you know, the government in general didn't seem to care much about what happened to, you know, the black kids, or any of that. So once the, you know, these white middle class, myself included, kids came down, then, well, wait a minute, you know, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So, you know, when that was over, when the training was over, they put us on buses to go to our assignments. Of course, they sent my boyfriend somewhere else, which was probably very smart. They sent him to Jackson, I think. I got to go to Columbia, Mississippi, which was a small freedom house down there. And that was an incredible experience. You know.
Tell me about the community.
In Columbia?
Yes.
Well, it was completely segregated, for one thing, obviously, at that time. Everything was down there. And I think, actually, Columbia might have even been a college school for white kids, but not for black kids. I don't know if there was a black college there, but I don't think so. The black kids were not allowed to go to the movies, use the library, even buy books. They could use Woolworths, that was about it. I remember I wanted some books for my teaching, and I went into the only little bookstore, and the guy who was Jewish, you know, I was talking to him, and I told him I wanted to buy a couple books. He said, I can't sell them to you. I said, why? And he said, because I have to live in this town. And if I sold these books to you, they would know, and then I'd be in trouble. And that's when it really got home to me. What it really meant was that he, you know, he was living a perfectly nice life, but he was not really free in any real, you know, form there. And he did not sell me any books, you know, he would not. And you could buy books in Woolworths, but those were all penny novels, you know, nothing of any substance. So it was pretty rough, you know.
Did you feel that you were in danger at all during this time?
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't know who they must have been, the Klan. They used to send cars around and stuff, and sometimes they recruit black kids to come and try and get us involved in stuff so that we would then be in trouble, you know. And honestly,
the Klan would recruit black kids?
Oh yeah, they go in and, you know, come with us, and then you're you do things, they'll lead you to stuff and there's trouble. I'm sure they paid him money, but I mean, the reason I knew this was because the leaders of the Freedom House would tell us, no, you don't want to get involved with those people, they're working with the Klan. We even had it sounds funny, a Tokyo Rose. You know what Tokyo Rose?
No.
Oh, in World War II, I guess, for a while, there was radio broadcasts from Japan that our troops could hear. And there was a program or a woman on who called herself Tokyo Rose, and would play, I guess they'd play music and stuff that would make the guys very sad and unhappy. And Paul, you're nodding. If you can help me, I don't know. I don't know a lot about Tokyo Rose, but I know a lot about this woman. And she called, and she would, you know, she would call and pretending that she was with us, but we knew she wasn't. You know, she was just calling to try and, you know, stir things up. You know, she was clearly a white woman. She identified herself as such, but it was one of my friends. He was not in Columbus or Jackson, but he was with a group of people, and they got chased by a Klan. I guess there were black and whites in the car, and they got chased by a Klan. And he ended up having to dive into, a river or something. He got shot.
Wow.
Yeah, he got shot. Not, he survived easily, but they were nice people, as my grandmother would say.
Wow, that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
But
I'm being sardonic.
Yeah.
These were not good people. I used to say when I came home, I could always tell when somebody came from Mississippi because they had a look of meanness about them that was unmistakable, and it was because of this life, I think, that they had been forced to lead, or that whether they were forced or not, that they led. I don't know whether it's like that now. I mean, I've never been back, frankly. I don't want to go back.
You can see the expressions you mentioned on some of the faces of the photography of the era.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, well, you see, that's it. But even when they're not in a crowd, when you walk down the street, these people, they just was like mean and lethal, It was scary.
Did you have interactions? Tell me a little bit about your interactions with either some of the adults from the community themselves, or did you have any interactions with other volunteers that you can tell me about?
We lived, of course, they placed us in homes. And so all of us were in homes in the community. And so we lived with these people, really. And of course, the other volunteers, it was a real mixed bag. There were a lot of African Americans from Chicago and, downstate New York, and then a lot of, fuzzy-haired hippies, but basically, I don't think we really have the fuzzy hair yet at that point. But that was basically it. You're watching, turn your watch. Do you need me to?
No, you're fine. Please continue.
Okay. So, yes, we lived together. We ate together. We slept at these people's houses.
Did you stay at white residence homes or black?
No, this woman. I remember the woman who put me up. She was so poor. She was an old woman, very old woman. And I think she had come to a point in her life where she didn't care if they came after her. That would be my guess. I don't know. I was very not too, sensitive at that time. But she was so poor, and she had a house. It was, she had a bed for me, and she had one for herself, and she would, feed me breakfast, and I knew that what she was giving me was like. It was like the best she could do. It was very minimal, but she was putting everything out, that she had to give. Wow. And it was very touching. I don't think I was alone in that. I think other people had a similar experience, but she really, I wish I could remember her name. I can remember her face, but I don't remember her name. But she was unbelievably generous, and I guess she had lived. They told me she had lived through a lot of stuff, with lynchings and hanging, lynchings and all kinds of, all ugly stuff in her lifetime. And so when the Freedom people came down there, SNCC came down there and asked for people to open their homes, I guess she just said, well, why not mine, basically, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
The courage it took to open your home.
Yeah, or you could put it another way. it was beyond courage. You know, if she had incorporated this courage, you know, courage is something when when you're sort of afraid of something. No, this woman, it was who she was and how she did it. And if that's courage, yes, that's courage.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it was beyond courage.
Amazing sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and potentially even worse. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And your friends, the other volunteers, you know, tell me a little about your friendships.
Well, I don't know that I had a lot of friends in this group. A lot of them were older than I was, and we came from very different places, you know.
Are you still in touch with any, or
None
did
of
you
them.
remain
No,
in touch?
no. Actually, I am in touch with the sister of someone who, it's funny, you know, life comes full circle, but no, none of the people I was there with. But some of these people from like Chicago, and some of the cities, when they found out I was Jewish, they decided they would dump on me for the wrongs that have been done by the Jewish landlords in these various ghettos.
Wow.
Well, you know, I was very young. I did not know, you know, first of all, I didn't know what it was, and second of all, I was so young. I had no idea how to handle something like that. But I do know one of the women who was also from that area. She came to my defense and helped me through it, you know, and helped me to understand it, you know. And the outcome of that was, after all of that, I've never been afraid of a confrontation like that again. I mean, I do know how to handle it now, but it was very painful at the time, you know, but growth isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. So there was some of that, you know, but I don't know, I can't say much else about it.
And your job, you taught.
Oh, I
so
taught.
Tell me about your teaching experience.
Yeah, that was interesting. First of all, there were no books to speak of. They had books that people had sent them. So I had taken a French course, so they decided I should teach French. Now, you must know that I was the worst French student in creation. I mean, really, I was not a good French student. But nonetheless, they wanted me to do that. And what had happened was that a lot of kids had signed up for it because they couldn't get foreign languages in their high school, because, you know, they had a segregated high school. They also couldn't get history, you know, a complete history education, so they signed up for history. I mean, they were hungry for knowledge. So I did the best I could, you know, and introduced them to French anyway. I don't think I taught them much French, but, you know, just to open it up that there was this, and then the books, you know, because they didn't have the same kind of history that we had, as far as I could gather. Yeah.
Were there particular students that you remember?
I do, but I don't know. I guess I remember them. I remember the students for the ones that I remember for their quest for knowledge, for their enthusiasm to learn. I can see their faces. That's all I can say. Yes, I do remember them, and that they really, really were hungry to learn this stuff. And I felt really, really inadequate because I was a freshman in college, for God's sakes. I mean, you know, I did the best I could, but a lot of the people in the house were actually graduate students, and so they were able to do a lot more. But I muddled my way through it, you know, as best I could.
So when you look back on the experience overall, what was the height of the most positive experience? And then what was the depth or the scariest or worst experience?
I was there?
Yes.
I'm gonna laugh. The height of it was when I was introduced to chitlins.
Oh, chitlin! Quite a southern delicacy that's very
Absolutely.
unique.
I mean, I love food, and when they fed chitlins, and you know, oh my God.
So for the audience's sake, should we let them know what chitlins are? that they are actually the intestines.
I know that
of
now.
pigs, but everyone in the audience might not know who's
Oh,
going
yes,
to
yes,
use
yes,
this.
please do.
Yes.
But, I mean, be that as it may, they were delicious. They were absolutely delicious. And the rest of the cooking, you know, they couldn't get food, these people, from supermarkets. There was one little market in the area there, and they would go get food, and it was on the edge of going bad because that's what they would send over to the market. But they managed to make incredibly ham hocks, you know, and which of course at this age, you know, grab my heart. But they were wonderful. I mean, food that I had never experienced, and it was so good. It was so good. So that was the best of it. It sounds weird, but that, you know, that's just when you say what made you feel good. Food.
And then what was the most challenging or the hardest experience?
Well, other stuff I've talked about, but I think the hardest, it was coming to grips with just how off base this country had been, how wrong it was, how wrong so many things were. And delusional though I was as an 18, 21-year-old kid, that I could change the world, somehow, somewhere I knew inside me it was going to take a lot of work and maybe a lot of people getting hurt, but even so, a lot of work and a lot of hardship, and we may not get there so fast, you know. And I think the hardest thing was coming to grips with that, and then realizing, you know, this is Mississippi, but maybe I don't belong here. Maybe I should be up in Connecticut, because there's plenty of it up there, or Massachusetts where I went to school, you know. Because I guess through some of the things that the older people in the Freedom House talked about or taught me, or that I kind of came to understand, was, in a way, you can almost deal with it easier when it's black and white, not to make a pun, but you know, it's awful. It's just, you go back up to Connecticut or Massachusetts, and it was much more subtle and much harder to deal with. And then New York City, which is where I ended up. But yeah, I mean, I realized how big the task was. So it was challenging, but it was hard. It was very hard. It's very hard to come to grips with it, to see that reality about the things that you had always been brought up to value. I mean, you have to understand, in my little tiny town, which was, I don't even want to think how, red, as we call it now. I mean, they were very conservative, very strong DAR, you know, very strong, traditional, I want to call it at that time, Republican. Not mean like things get now, but very, very strong, and very, as I told you, not so great to people who were different. But
so it must have been very difficult for those one or two African Americans who were in your high school.
I can't even imagine. But the thing was that you have to understand that I was recognized by the DAR for having been a good citizen, you know, throughout high school. So I had been brought into that and been educated fully in that. And though my parents, of course, you know, made sure I knew other realities, it was still, that was the thing that I thought was of value. And after Mississippi, I realized, no, that is just a fantasy. That doesn't, you know, it's just a little tiny fantasy of people who are in that. But, you know, of course, they couldn't invite me to be in the DAR because I'm Jewish, you know. Well, no, because none of my people were here to fight in the revolution. And, you know, they had all these Eastern Star and Masons and all this stuff when I was growing up. So I had to sort of shed myself of all the things that had been put up, of things of value that you would want to be, you know, or emulate. That was hard.
Wow. That was powerful. So you talked about the dangers, and around that time that you arrived in Mississippi, we talked about Goodman, Cheney, and Schwerner who went missing. So how did you and the other volunteers, how did that play into what you were thinking about your experience? Did it make you more afraid? What impact did that have?
Well, I'll speak for myself. I was awfully young. Nothing's going to touch me. I mean, really. I think everyone there, they hadn't been found yet, in the time. I don't think in the time, I don't remember the time I was there, but everybody knew they were dead. And they knew that any time someone came around doing something, around the Freedom House, who knows where it would go. We were lucky they didn't shoot guns at us or try to, well, once they tried to storm into the house, but they were pushed out,
You said that so casually. Once they tried to push into the house, but storm the house. Wow. Were you afraid?
We were all together. I don't know. Was I afraid? No, I wasn't. I was too young to be afraid.
Wow. Wow.
I'll tell you, now I'd be afraid. But I just somehow, I had a belief at that time that right would always win,
Right.
It would always rise up to the
Prevail.
top and be right. That was my delusional childhood. So I thought, well, if we do this and we keep doing this, everything's going to be all right because it's right, Then I grew up, and I realized life was not quite that simple.
Right.
But that was, at that time, that was my belief. I know it was not the belief of a lot of people, and especially the blacks. They knew very well what was at stake,
Right.
But
And the complicated fact that the people trying to storm the house also thought they were right.
right, well, yeah.
Right.
That's an interest. Well, I don't want to go into that, but that's an interesting psychology. Did they think they were right, or was something else at work? I mean, it's somewhere in my my mental construct. I cannot believe that these people truly thought this was right. There was something. It was some other construct, but not right as you and I know right.
Right.
Okay.
So we never did get to your Dr. Barbanell, correct?
Yes, I have.
And what is your doctorate in?
Art.
Art.
Art and education. Yes.
Wow. And
Yeah.
you taught French?
Down
you
there,
were-
I
down
taught
there
French.
you taught French. So you were definitely of the classics and of the humanities.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's important because I think that's part of the framing for people to know your life and your lens. So now you've had this experience. You talked about how it impacted you, and when you came back, what was life like? Did that change you? Did it impact your future and your career and what you sought to do?
Well, I should tell you, when we were coming back, it was the time of the Democratic Convention. I think it was the Democratic Convention in Atlantic City on the boardwalk. So I did not go straight home. We came up with a group of us, freedom riders. We drove straight through, did not stop, and got there and found churches and whatever. And then proceeded to try and get the Mississippi Freedom Party seated at the Democratic. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay. So this was an alternative group for those who don't know, a group of delegates who they gave them, I forget what they called it, roving status. They were able to come in and be delegates at large or something. But they never seated them as the Mississippi delegation. But we were on the boardwalk, and it was interesting. The Nazis showed up, in full regalia. I didn't know there were Nazis till then in America. They wore the uniforms and, the whole thing. And then the Teamsters showed up.
Wow.
They were on our side, you know.
Yeah.
I described them, and God bless them, men without necks. I mean, they were so bulked up, and you know, and they came and they wanted to help, and you know, and they were helping, and they saw the Nazis. And they beat the crap out of them, excuse me, until the cops came.
Wow.
You know, I mean, that was pretty, that scared me, you know. Not that I didn't want them to be beaten up, but just the power, the force of these men, these very big men, you know. They were I want to say they were violent, but they really, I don't know what they were, but they had been in the army and fought against the Nazis. So they just lost it when they saw the uniforms. and
Wow. So did you continue to be involved in civil rights after the summer?
Well, that's a hard question to answer. When I came back, I was constantly being asked to talk about the summer, you know, and even to this day, obviously, much less. But I did a lot of talking, and things were happening in the anti-war movement and stuff, and I left college. I went off to, I don't know what I went off to do. I just didn't think college was relevant anymore. I went off to work, you know, and then eventually went back to college and finished. And by then, I thought that the best thing I could do as an individual was to work with the positive in people through art, and also help to find kids, including African American kids, expression through art, a vehicle to express themselves. So that's how I sort of landed there. I mean, I didn't particularly, I don't think I planned it really, but there's something that's driving me that way.
Okay. And do you think that your experience in Mississippi influenced your choice of career, or?
Well, of course, I mean, my influence in Mississippi shaped who I was. I became who I was. Not that I was a different person, but it definitely shaped who I was and how I wanted to move through life.
Can you say more about that? Who were you? Who are you? Who were you then? Who are you?
You should ask my husband.
I know that's a big question,
Yeah,
but
who am I? Well, I mean, as a young kid, I was a stubborn, opinionated kid who thought I knew everything. Doesn't every kid think that? And you know, I trusted my own perceptions implicitly. If I thought I saw something, boy, it was true. And I also thought that basically I could do anything, not necessarily alone, but anything could be done. The experience with Mississippi tempered that a tad. It first of all made me much more confident and able to deal with the actual realities of all the things that were happening. Don't forget, it was the anti-war movement, it was the civil rights movement, they were trying to pass civil rights legislation, the boys were being sent off to war, you know, all kinds of stuff. And, you know, you needed to have a certain amount of internal grounding, I think, at least I did, of who you were, or else you'd be lost in either drugs or whatever. So it made me pretty confident in that. And when I decided to go to school, I was confident in doing what I was doing. And when I was teaching, which was many years later, I was able to get a grant to integrate art and other disciplines, and so I integrated social issues and stuff into the art, and I made myself a resource in the schools that I worked in so that we could use art to make kids aware of civil rights, of other kinds of things, you know, and there are a lot of people who are out there, artists who are very, very much doing that anyway, so I ran a program where I sort them out and put them together, you know, or with the schools, and I had some money, so we were able to pay them, and everybody was happy.
No starving artists work for you.
Well, not at that time.
So when you think about the significance of Freedom Summer, for yourself, for the country, what do you think were the biggest takeaways?
Well, I'll address the country first, and I'll say Barack Obama.
Oh,
You
wow.
know, I don't know, but I don't think I don't mean Mississippi Summer alone, but I don't think without the civil rights movement that would ever have happened. And honestly, as my husband could tell me, when he was nominated, I was surprised. When he was elected, I never thought I'd live to see the day, you know. But I was happy. I mean, I was happy, but I really didn't. I never thought I'd live long enough to see that happen, to see a black man elected president of this country. So for a brief moment, I was encouraged, as we all were.
Wow.
As for myself, I mean, it's like I said, it's who I am. It's hard to even talk about it. It's part of who I am. You know, I'm not that little girl from Connecticut anymore. You know, I don't know how to articulate it. It's just, it became very much who I am in terms of being able to feel a comfort in a world where people were very different, and yet had enormous capacity for common ground, you know. So I was able to, I'm able still, I hope I'm still able, you know, to move through life and be comfortable and be able to talk to people and try to draw them in, or if it's appropriate to bring them together. I don't get out that much anymore, but that's sort of, maybe I'm being egotistic. My husband just walked away. He just doesn't want to hear. It's okay. He's as old as I am, so he walks away often. Yes, so I don't know how, I mean, can you ask me a more specific question? Because I sure can't answer that.
No, I think you did a fabulous job talking about the impact of the movement on you, on your career, on your choices in life, and you're deciding to focus on the positive and using art as a means to integrate the lessons learned from Freedom Summer and giving opportunity to others to express themselves through art and the movement.
I'd like to say one thing. You're not finished, or maybe you are, but I just would hope, I really hope, that the young people who are watching this or are coming up or don't watch it have the opportunity to find something, some path in life that connects them to this a kind of larger mission, a larger understanding, a larger involvement of life. We were very lucky. We were young at a time when things were changing and open to growth. And I'd like to think it's still possible that young people can find the place where they fit to plug in and make the difference that they can do, you know, because that's a part of the joy of living, in my opinion. So okay, babble away.
Oh no, that was powerful. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for saying that. So I'm going to end with this question. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you can think of that you would want to share about your experience, about you in general, about your life today? I would love to hear it.
That's a tough one. Because you asked me almost everything. Well, it's something I should say. This is probably going to take longer than you want me to say. I was the child of parents who had been involved in the communist, you know, stuff of the 30s. Not that they were communists per se, I mean, but the government thought my father was for a while, but he wasn't. But there's a term that I've come to learn that describes people like me, and a lot of us were in the movement, and they called us red diaper babies.
Yes, I've heard that term.
Yes.
Please describe that for the audience.
I don't know that I can because it came to me secondhand, but really what it is that you were brought up with people who had, you know, that were communists, and so they branded you red from the time you were a baby. So that, you know, I was brought up, despite all the nonsense that my parents did, with a fundamental belief that you are not safe in this world unless everyone is safe, and you are not free in this world unless everyone is free.
Wow.
And so they had had friends and been involved in God knows what movements in the 30s. Some of their black friends moved to Europe. They couldn't take it here anymore. But basically they taught me, you know, they instilled in me from a very early age what that is and what, so if that's, I guess that, and so as you came up, the orientation towards politics was, you know, very liberal, if not off the deep end liberal. So, I don't know. Paul, can you help me with this? I'm going babbling. What is a red diaper baby?
Red diaper baby is a young person who had parents who were involved in leftist politics.
Oh boy, I could have said that quickly. It took me 5 minutes and I didn't even get to it. Thank you.
No, but you said so much more impactful things when you described what your understanding of a red diaper baby was.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Especially what stays with me is the part about no one is free until everyone is free.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that, because I do think that is meaningful and a great way to end this interview. Did you have anything though that you wanted to illustrate or share, or did you bring anything that?
I don't have anything. It was a long time ago. The only thing I have at home, but I didn't think you'd be interested, I have a curriculum from the Freedom School. But I think, Paul, you copied that once, didn't you? No, maybe it was somebody else. If you're interested, I could probably dig it out. I mean, it wasn't, I'm not even sure it was the one I used, but somewhere I came upon it, you know.
That would be great.
The photos, long gone, my mother cleaned up the house, you know. I don't know. No, I really don't. The books that were written, of course, everybody has those, you know. And, but no, I don't really, I don't.
Freedom School curriculum was very influential, and many other organizations, educational organizations, borrowed from the Freedom School curriculum because it was designed to empower the young people who were young black people who were going to be the next generation of leadership in Mississippi.
Well, I'm not sure what I have. I don't even remember what it's on it. But you know what? I've been cleaning out my house with just a 80-year-old woman. You don't ever want to do that. But I've been going through a lot of papers and getting rid of a lot of nonsense. But I know I would never throw that away. I have a file somewhere. I will look for it. It may not come soon, but I'll get it to you.
If I don't receive it, I will remind you.
Okay, good.
That would be a great
Yeah.
addition to this conversation. Well, thank you so much, Pat, Dr. Barbanell, for your sacrifice, for your work, for your leadership, for your creativity, and for your contributions to society, to Freedom Summer, and to everything in between.
I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you.